Why do I keep ending up in the same place? Why does the same thing keep happening? Not once, not twice, but over and over again. Hi, I'm Rob, and in this episode of the MindShift Method Cognitive Pattern Reprogramming Podcast, I want to talk about something that, if you really start to see it clearly, changes the way you understand your entire life. Because at some point, most people have had this thought: why do I keep ending up in the same place? Why does the same thing keep happening? Not once, not twice, but over and over again. Same stress, same reactions, same arguments, same habits and same outcomes. What makes it even more frustrating is that you're not sitting still. You're trying. You're thinking about it. You're reflecting, making decisions and saying to yourself, this time it's going to be different. Yet somehow you find yourself back there again. It can start to feel frustrating and confusing because part of you generally believes you're doing the work, but another part of you keeps repeating the experience. This is where most people go wrong. They assume that if the result hasn't changed, it must be something about them. They think, maybe I'm not disciplined enough, or I'm not strong enough, not consistent enough, so there must be something wrong with me. But that's not what's happening. This is the shift I really want you to take in. You're not stuck because you're broken. You're stuck because your brain is running a pattern, cognitive pattern. You're not stuck because of your circumstances or your situation. You're stuck because of the pattern or patterns your brain is running. Let's slow this down for a minute and focus on understanding what that really means. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. More importantly, you can start to change it. Cognitive pattern is simply a learned way your brain responds to situations. It's not something you consciously decide in the moment. It's something your brain has practiced over time, through experience, through repetition, and also through interpretation. And now it runs automatically. So when something happens in your life, you don't pause and logically analyze everything from scratch. You don't sit there and say, let me objectively assess all possible meanings of this situation. It's not how the brain works. Instead, it goes straight to what it knows. Instantly, what it knows is the pattern. So before you've even had time to think, your brain has already interpreted the situation. It's already assigned meaning to it, generated a feeling, and started preparing a response. And all of that happens really fast. So fast that it feels like it's real. It feels like it's reality. Not a pattern, not a process, but reality. This is where people get caught. Because when something feels real, you don't question it. You react to it. You respond to it. You try to justify it and defend it. You also build on top of it. Before you know it, you're back in the same behaviour. What that does is then creates the same outcome. Here's the simplest way to understand it. Every situation you face acts as a trigger. That trigger sets off a pattern in your mind. And most people think they're choosing how they respond. The reality is they're not. The trigger fires, the pattern runs, and the result shows up automatically. Same trigger, same pattern, same outcome. You might say, well, I don't want that result anymore. But wanting something is different. Wanting something doesn't change the program, because the program isn't running at the level of intention. It's running at the level of pattern. Here's where this becomes something that's really important, because a lot of people try to change their life by focusing on the outcome. I want to be calmer. I want to be more relaxed. I want to be more confident. I want to stop reacting like that. I want better results in my life, and all of those things are good intentions. But they're aimed at the end of a process, not at the start of it. Because the outcome is not where the change happens. The outcome is where the pattern finishes. So if you want a different result, you don't start at the result. You start at the pattern. And here's something else most people don't realise. These patterns don't just show up in one area of your life. They generalise. What that means is the same pattern can show up in your relationships, your work, your anxiety, your stress, your habits, and the way you think about yourself. Different situations. That same underlying process. So you might think you've got multiple problems, but often you've just got one pattern showing up in multiple places. Until that pattern shifts, until that pattern changes, the results tend to stay the same. And this is the part where people usually stop or pause, because something starts to click. They start thinking, hang on, that actually makes sense. When that happens, something important shifts. Because instead of blaming yourself, or blaming the situation, or blaming someone else, you start to see the mechanism. You start to see that there's something running underneath it all. Once you see it, you're no longer completely inside it. You're starting to observe it. That observation is the beginning of change. Not fixing, not forcing, not trying harder, just watching, seeing. Because once you see the pattern, you can start to separate it from it. When you separate from it, you can start to change it. In today's episode, we're going to go further into this. We're going to look at why these patterns feel so real and why they keep pulling you back in. And then they quietly shape your results without you even realising it. Because once you understand that, you stop fighting the wrong battle and you start working at the level where change actually happens. So now that we've started to see that what's actually driving your results is not what you're doing, but the patterns your brain is running, the next logical question becomes, so why are these patterns so hard to break? Because if it was just about knowing, you'd already be different. If awareness alone was enough, you'd hear something like this once and everything would shift. But it doesn't. It's because these patterns are not operating at the level of logic. They're operating at the level of automatic processing. More importantly, they're designed to feel real, not optional, not questionable, but real. Let's break down what's actually happening inside your mind when one of these patterns kicks in. Because once you understand this, you stop getting pulled around by it in the same way. The first thing your brain does is assign cause, very quickly, very fast. Usually it assigns that cause outside of you. So when something happens, instead of your brain saying, this is a pattern I'm running, it says, that's why I feel that way. They did that. That caused this. They're the problem. What that does is creates what we call an external sense of control. It feels like what's happening inside you is being driven by something outside of you. And again, this isn't something you consciously choose. It's automatic. It feels convincing. Because your brain presents it as a fact, not an interpretation. So you don't question it, you react to it. You build on it, you reinforce it. Just like that, the and strengthens. And something else starts happening. Your brain begins to generalize. Instead of staying specific to what's happening right now, it goes broader, goes wider, goes more global. So instead of thinking, this moment didn't go how I expected, becomes, this always happens to me. Here we go again. Nothing ever changes. This is just how it is. When your thinking goes global, your experience becomes heavier because you're no longer dealing with one moment. You're dealing with a pattern that feels like it stretches across your entire life. It stretches back into the past, into the present, and even into the future. That's when you start to feel really, really stuck. It's when you start to feel it's not just happening, but permanent. Now layer on top of that, your brain is starting to lose distinction, meaning it stops separating things properly. One situation blends into another. One feeling connects to 10 other feelings, and one reaction links to every similar experience you've ever had. Instead of just dealing with what's in front of you, you're dealing with everything your brain has associated with it all at the same time. This is where overwhelm starts to build because your system isn't responding to one thing. It's responding to a whole network of things. And then while all of this is happening, there's yet another process running underneath it as well. This is a big one. It's your brain's relationship with uncertainty. Most people think they suffer or struggle with anxiety or stress because of what might happen. More often they struggle because of not knowing what will happen. It's the uncertainty itself that creates the discomfort. So what your brain tries to do is reduce that uncertainty. It does that the fastest way it knows how. It does that by going back to the pattern, because the pattern is familiar, it's known, it's predictable. Even if it's not helpful, it's certain. Uncertainty feels safer than the unknown, so your brain says, let's just run what we know. In that moment, you're pulled back into the same thinking, the same emotional response, the same behavior. And from the outside, it can look like nothing has changed, but from the inside, it feels completely justified. Because the pattern has made it feel real. And there's one last layer to all of this. This is where people really start to see it. The brain also turns inward. It starts running internal loops, thinking, replaying, imagining, predicting, over and over and over again. The more it loops, the more real it feels. The more certain it feels, the more convincing it becomes, even if it's not accurate. So now you've got an external cause being assigned, you've got global thinking expanding it, you've got loss of distinction linking everything together, the need to resolve uncertainty pulling you back to the familiar, and then internal loops reinforcing the whole experience. All this is happening automatically. When people say, I don't know why I keep ending up here, the answer is not that they're not trying hard enough. It's that this entire process is running underneath their awareness. Until you see it, you're inside it, reacting to it, being driven by it, repeating it over and over again. Once you see that, something shifts. You begin to realize this isn't just happening to me. This is something my brain is doing. That distinction is everything. It's the moment you can see the pattern. no longer completely controlled by it. You've created space, even if it's only a small one. And in that space, change becomes possible. Not because you force it, but because you interrupt it. You interrupt what's been automatic. That's exactly where we're going next. Because once you understand how to interrupt the pattern, you stop getting pulled back into the same results. You start creating something different in your life. So now we get to the part that really, really matters. Not just understanding the pattern, but learning how to begin to break it. Because once you see what's happening, the next question is always the same. Go out and see that there's a pattern, but what do I do in the moment? This is where we need to be very clear. Breaking a pattern is not about forcing yourself to be different. Breaking a pattern is not about trying harder. It's not about saying, I'm not going to think like that anymore. Because the moment the pattern activates, that level of control disappears. Instead of trying to overpower the pattern, what we do is work with how it actually operates. The first step is recognizing it. Not after the fact, not later on, but as close to the moment as possible. It might sound simple, but it's one of the most powerful shifts you can make. Because instead of being completely inside the experience, you start to step slightly outside it. The language matters here. Instead of this is happening, you begin to recognize this is a pattern running. Now again, it will still feel real. The emotion will still be there. The thoughts will still come. Something changes. You've introduced awareness. And awareness creates space, even if it's only a small amount. A small amount of space is enough. And from there, we move into the next step, interrupting the speed. Because patterns rely on momentum and speed. They move quickly. They stack on top of each other. Before you know it, you're fully inside it. So what we do now is we slow it down. Don't stop it. Don't eliminate it. Just slow it down. It might be as simple as pausing for a moment. Or taking a breath. Or shifting your attention slightly, looking up, looking sideways, not to escape it, but to interrupt the automatic flow, because the moment you slow it down, you start to weaken its hold. This is where we go further. Instead of letting your mind stay in that global space, this always happens, this is everything, this is my whole situation. We bring it back to something specific. We narrow the focus. What is actually happening right now? Not everything. It's what's happening in this moment. Because when we're specific, it breaks patterns. It takes something that feels overwhelming and brings it back into something more manageable. Now we begin to shift something else, and that's control. So remember, one of the first things the pattern does is push control outside of you. It's them, it's the situation. They make me feel, it's what's happening. Now we bring it back completely. not unrealistically, but enough to change your experience. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? We asked, how can I influence this right now? What can I influence? Not everything, just something. It's the moment your brain feels even a small amount of control, your system starts to settle. Now there's another piece here, and this is something that most people avoid, and that's uncertainty. It's part of what keeps the pattern running is your brain's need to resolve uncertainty quickly. It wants an answer, it wants closure. It wants to feel like it's understanding what's happening. If it can't get that, it goes back to the pattern. So now, instead of trying to eliminate uncertainty, we do something differently. We allow it, even briefly. We allow things to be unresolved. We let things be unclear. What that does is teaches your brain something new. It teaches your brain that it can sit in uncertainty without needing to run the old program. This is where real change begins, not in one big moment, not in one perfect response, in these small interruptions, these small shifts, these small moments where the pattern doesn't run exactly the same way it used to. Over time, it starts to compound. You begin to notice you don't react as quickly, you don't go as global, you don't get pulled as deeply into the same loops. The results start to change because your life suddenly became easier, because your response changed. And when your response changes, your outcomes follow. Now, this is important. Because what we're talking about here is not perfection. You're not going to catch every pattern. You're not going to interrupt every moment. You don't need to. This change doesn't come from getting it right every time. It comes from doing it differently enough times. Each time you do, you weaken the old pattern and strengthen a new one. That's the work. That's what actually creates different results. Not forcing yourself to be someone else, but retraining the way your mind operates in real time. Now, in the next episode, we're going to take this one step further. So a lot of what we've been talking about here happens incredibly fast. So fast that most people don't even realise it's happening until after they've reacted. That's what we're going to break down next time. Why you react before you think. More importantly, how to start slowing that process down so you can begin to respond with clarity instead of impulse. So I'll see you in the next episode. That's all for today.